Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm Avisa, and welcome to an Uncle Bobbie's virtual author event. I'm really happy to have author Jonah-Mixon Webster here with us tonight to share this soulful new poetry collection with us. This collection urgently centers Blackness, the self, and the dismantling of corrupt powers in the fight for freedom. It's published last month by the Knopf Publishing Group. You can order your copy by clicking the green button below. That will take you to Uncle Bobbie's online bookshop, or you can come into the store and pick up your copy there. I urge you, please go out and get this book. You know how we do after the discussion. We're going to have time for audience questions, so please submit them over the course of the conversation by using the Ask a Question module at the bottom of the screen, or you can put your question in the side chat bar, and we'll get to them. Without further ado, let me introduce our moderator, Airea D. Matthews. She's a poet, and her first collection of poems is the critically acclaimed Simulacra. It's received the prestigious 2016 Yale Series of Younger Poets Award. The collection explores the topics of longing and desire with power, insight, and intense emotion. For her writing, Matthews has earned a 2020 Pew Fellowship as well as the 2017 Margaret Walker For My People Award. In 2016, she received both the Rona Jaffe Foundation's Writer Award and a Louis Untermeyer Scholarship in Poetry from the Red Loaf Writers Conference. Her work has appeared in Callaloo, Gulf Coast, VQR, Best American Poets, American Poet, The Rumpus, Four-Way Review, Harvard Review, and elsewhere. A Cave, Canaan, Callaloo, and Crusty Literary Arts Fellow, she's assistant professor and directs the poetry program at Bryn Mawr College. Everyone, Airea D. Matthews.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. And I feel doubly honored because I get to spend time with my friend who I haven't seen in a very long time.
That's so great. Thank you for being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And anytime I get a chance to talk about Jonah's work, it's always a privilege and an honor. Because in Jonah's work, I see such possibility for what, even as a writer, I think as a writer, one of the things we tend to do is to look at other people's work to try and figure out or configure some avenue toward possibility. And that's precisely what Jonah allows. He's manifesting the Afro avant-garde tradition, and it's a form that represents the future, but recognizes in order to release the past. Some might call it Afrofuturism. And when I started thinking about Afrofuturism, I think I was overwhelmed by the idea and the expectation that a Black artist can necessarily be overtly political in creating work that questions present and historical cultural identities. But Jonah's work gives that permission. He's interested in the complex interweaving of textual ancestry and history, how ancient cultures and rituals or figures from our contemporary literature collide on the page and in the personhood of the artist. His process embraces and acknowledges that a Pan-African body can simultaneously be avant-garde and guardian of the ancient. The intersection of these modes of expression creates such a dynamic and a complex relationship with language in his work. And I'm super invested in understanding the ways in which his psychophysical approach to creative work increases or influences the scale of risk he takes inside the work. I mean, he is for sure an experimental poet, but also very much, and I hate to use the word experimental because it feels like it's reductive, because he is poet. But he is a poet that works in the experimental vein, and he works in the vein of the metamodernist, where he oscillates between the self to something greater, and then back to a renewed understanding of the self. I think here of like cultural theorists like Vermeulen and Acker, who describe the metamodern as a pendulum swinging between 2, 3, 5, 10 innumerable poles, but always moving forward. And that's what Jonah's work allows us as readers to take in and to try and understand. And it's such a distinct honor to be in the contemporary presence, to have him as a friend, to have him as a peer, and to think and to be able to witness the way his mind works. He's an incredible thinker. And I'm just really happy to be in conversation with him tonight, because anytime, as I said, anytime I get a chance to spend time with Jonah, I always learn something new. And
so beautiful.
Yeah, I always learn something new, and I'm always happy. But let me read the more formal bio. Jonah-Mixon Webster is a poet and conceptual sound artist from Flint, Michigan. Stereotype is his debut collection of poems. It was originally published by Asada Press in 2018 and won the Sawtooth Poetry Prize, the Penn Joyce Osterwheel Award for Poetry, and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Poetry. He graduated from Eastern Michigan University and received a PhD in creative writing from Illinois State University. He is the recipient of the Wyndham Campbell Prize for Poetry and fellowships from the Vermont Studio Center, the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics, the Conversation Literary Festival, and the Penn Writing for Justice program. And I'll add, more recently, he was awarded a postdoctoral fellowship at Columbia for this coming year. His poetry and hybrid works are featured in various publications, including the Yale Review, Callaloo, The Rumpus, Harper's Magazine, Best New Poets 2017, and Best American Experimental Writing 2018. It is my distinct honor, privilege, and just calls for joy to be able to introduce Jonah-Mixon Webster tonight. Jonah.
Oh, goodness. Hey, thank you so much. Oh my God, Airea, thank you so much. That's such a beautiful introduction. I'm over here like, oh God, I got.
Well, I'll leave you two friends to catch up.
So much of Visa too. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, both here, present in time, and also asynchronously or asynchronistically, however adjective of that works. But yeah. Thank you so much for joining. You know, this is such a full circle moment. When we were in the green room, I was able to kind of keep reiterating and keep echoing, like, you know, you were the first person, you know, to really hear some of these inchoate ideas of this project when we met. I think that was what now, like 7-8 years ago. Yeah. I think we met for the very first time. Yeah, and he just held the ideas and the thoughts and the energy. Just so graciously, and it invigorated me after talking with you about it and thinking through some of this stuff. So such a full circle moment. Thank you.
Well, I mean, the book has taken on a life of its own, and that's the beauty of beautiful work, is that it does weave its own path. It creates its own kind of ecosystem, and that's what the work has allowed for you. The work has cleared away, and more recently, I believe the work was republished because Asada had some issues, and then the work was republished by Knopf, which is an incredible publisher. And I think that it's an expanded version of it, is it not?
Yep. So got some new stuff, some added stuff, some remixes. Some remixes.
I'm so happy. I mean, I'm giddy anytime I get to be in a room with you, because some of it is like, and I think the audience will see this tonight, is like you create new forms. Mm-hmm. You create new ways of interacting with poetry. And in that way, Stereotype is really an experience, right? It's not just a book, it is an experience. And it's an experience which addresses the inherent violence of expectation. Mm-hmm. And so it resonates as like a living tome, but not only a living tome, but a lived tome that negotiates the somatics of kind of a racialized consciousness. And it's like, once you become aware of the self performs according to like some inherited script, which is the stereotype. Yes. And so you introduce us to this concept through the first poem. It's kind of an awareness of the body zombified. Mm-hmm. Right? The poem opens with a brief epigraph: somatic de-zombification ceremony for the real nigga, with resulting poem. I wondered if you might read Invocation for the Sacrosanct for us tonight.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to begin where it begins. Invocation of the Sacrosanct, a somatic zombification ritual for the real nigga, with the resulting poem. After William Wells Brown, Tisa Bryant, Linda Carpio, Charles Chestnut, Douglas Kearney, Adrian Piper, Richard Pryor, Ishmael Reed, Kara Walker, and Burt Williams. Instructions. First, in a widely dark room, make the floor a circle of lit candles. Take a mirror big enough to fit a whole body and place it in the middle with you within. Leave enough space for movement. On repeat, play track 8, Can I Live, from Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt album. Second, find 6 stereotypical tokens of blackness for the body, an article for each: head, neck, wrists, ankles, feet. For mine, I chose a 5950 bang to the back, a Jesus piece, a Pelly with the fur collar, a faux platinum watch with the bracelet, and a pair of Timbs. Now, accompany the tokens with 2 intoxicants, one to drink and one to inhale. For mine, I chose a 5th of Remy Martin and a backwoods filled with some kill. Third, in the middle of the circle, stand full body. Take whatever you have to sip on and pour some for the fallen. Next, take it to the head. Next, fire up. Next, fill your mouth with the names of niggas you know. Finally, in the mirror, practice your affectations for hollering at your slime, homie, op, partner, dooney dude up the block from the heart. Hey, what's good, my nigga? Mimicking a gun bust as you tell the story of the last niggas you clapped with your chest. Doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo. For the song on the radio, said that I'ma ride for my motherfucking nigga. Most likely I'ma die with my finger on the trigger. I've been grinding outside all day with my niggas, and I ain't going in unless I'm with my niggas, my niggas, my nigga. Say 3 times. For the police, mouth fixed to say, man, I ain't even do shit. Hands, wherever the hell they tell you to put them. Make ass and balls part and lift ready for a surprise. Man, it's my fuck God. A conflict. Hands not up like don't shoot, but out here like what's up. Fourth, leave. Turn up, stunt, flex, turn up, parking lot pimp, ride down, ride out, turn up. Take note of how others interpret your actions and speech. Stop. Now, write a poem that will raise you from the dead. A song for the unconscious self, or First Freedom in 4 parts. Can't worry about what another nigga think. That's liberation, and baby, I want it. Outcast, liberation. Think, blank, meaning mirror stage makes a nigga real, meaning here we are, what we still don't know. Think, apperception, as if black bodies are victims of their own psychic residual. Say nigga and try to remember anything else. Think, blood, becoming the reflection of a distant brother. You can tell y'all related by how you mimic his nostrils when pissed or sobbing. Think, resistance, to occupy a wound with a mouth and ask, now what nigga feel like having fun after all that?
Thank you, Jonah.
Whew, thank you for being here.
I know that takes it out of you.
It's fun because it puts me so deep into my body.
Right, right. Because it's like, it creates this argument around, or at least introduces this argument around race as performance, right? Race as some sort of inherited performance. We'll talk a little bit later about inherited scripts, but like this sense that the visual, the physical, the psychic aspects of who you are supposed to be have been predetermined, and then you kind of fit inside of it however you can. And is that a survival mechanism?
That's a great question. And I think, yeah, it is. I think that's one of the, the kind of the crux or the risk, right, in this, in that piece, in that tandem, which was, where at what point does this performance protect, and at what point does it actually make one more vulnerable or increasingly vulnerable? And I think also, like, for my own lived experiences, the way I developed, the way I learned how to mimic, those around me, the performances of Black males around me, it was a survival mechanism. I was outed at 9 years old. And, so very early, at a very early age, I knew that I was not performing the way that other Black boys in my neighborhood were. And so from 19 through, until adulthood, I had to kind of assume more of those kind of performance elements in order to navigate the very immediate space of Flint that I was in. But then at the same time, realizing that the larger immediate space of America, of the country, right, it was becoming increasingly more threatening, or my performance was at once threatening and at once being, it also made me physically vulnerable to threats. And even within the kind of the performative space of being on the north side of Flint, Michigan, going to inner city school, having guns put out on me here and there, it still, kind of did that weird ambivalent thing where it's like it at once kind of, it kept me, I remember Bobbie Francis one time, I was in workshop with Bobbie, and, I think I'm just dressed how regular, I think I had on a fitted hat, just some regular sweats. I remember she's like, oh yeah, he looked like he don't want to be fucked with. And that was also, it was a performance, it was an affectation that, I put on so I wouldn't get messed with, right? But then, when it comes to the police, they mess with me all the time. So, so it's very much there in that space.
It's interesting how, like, the idea of essentialization, it's a reduction, but it also is a way to make oneself less visible among others, right? It's like, it's how you create a herd. It's how you create a pack. It's how you create, you become less visible. You got homies, you got crew, so that who are all doing the same thing and acting in the same way, so that you don't have to be seen, right? Right. And so, but it's interesting because that poem specifically goes on to confront these things as a type. You confront it as a type of essentialization, which is never good, but at the same time, maybe never is too strong of a word. Like, if we are sociological beings, like we need fellowship.
We do, yeah. We need to belong, right? Yeah.
We want to belong, right? Right? And like, society gives you this like really narrow script. Okay, you got to act this way, belong here. And like, how it's the zombification. It's like you actually consciously have to somatically de-zombify yourself.
Exactly.
So that you are. I had a question about like writing this poem. When did it come to you as you were writing? So did it come to you as you were finishing the text? Because sometimes the first poems in a collection can be the last poem you write. And so when did this poem come, and how much did it take shape? Did it help the collection take shape, or did it come to form after the collection took shape?
That's a beautiful question. And actually, it was the first poem. It was the first poem. Yeah, I was doing, at the time I was doing a lot of training in, just somatic practices, somatic writing, thinking about what does it mean to write about the body with the body, and to have this very strong, conscientious, kind of control and experiment, right, with what the body produces when it's placed in certain circumstances, certain situations. I was working through, some influences from C.A. Conrad's work with somatics and somatic writing, and thinking, like, the field of somatic practice, whether it's, somatic dance or acting, and even somatic writing, was completely, kind of void of racialization or any kind of a racial, attending or even, or deconstruction through it. And so writing these set of instructions, right, where to place your body, how to behave with your body, drawing, strong, very strong, stringent attention towards that, right? And also realizing that your body is racialized in these spaces. And and it's like, so, okay, so what are the, what's the information, right, that these kind of like physicalized embodiments, what information do they hold? Do they kind of also bestow? What is I think about oftentimes like the b-boy stance. How does what does the body know in that position? Right? What does the Black body understand in that position, and how is it performing this information? And so I'm thinking about, other things like, how embodied knowledge actually works, and how it's revealed based on the position or the relationship, to other bodies in the space. So working through that, it kind of set the tone for how some of the other poems were, to kind of be become like further investigations of that, right, of those embodied knowledges, right? So putting your body or realizing that your body is already racialized and already in a precarious position, right? What is it that the body has, comes to know or understand, and what new knowledges, does the body create in order to move or to navigate around all this precarity?
Right.
Yeah, the rest of the work, right, is just other positions or other stations of the Black body, knowing and navigating.
Right. It almost reads like a revolution around an axis to some degree, how positionality plays into it, and how just from a different position, you have a different perspective, and you're able to read into it from that perspective. So you read from multiple perspectives in the book. But I couldn't help, and because of that, there's multiple themes in the book, right? But I couldn't help but be drawn by the ways in which you've implicated the stereotype or the incomplete portrayal as one form of state-sanctioned violence. But it's state-sanctioned, but it's also self-sanctioned, right? And so you paint this picture of inherent violence, a flawed expectation, and then it moves through this labyrinthine but really familiar hall of racist and systemic mirrors, and how a lack of safety and trust bred by the stereotype is exactly the same root cause of other violences perpetuated by the state. So there's a deeply held thread throughout the book that seems to imply this gets you that.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you might read Paranoiac number 5, coupled with Black Martyrdom number 6.
Definitely. Make sure I can get to it. And I think those two pieces, right, are definitely working that same thread. Whereas, that is definitely drawing those parallels, and I didn't really consider that, I think, before. So Paranoiac number 5 first, and then Black Martyrdom number 6. Paranoiac number 5, Hoplomania. Everybody got a pistol. Everybody got a 45. And the philosophy seems to be, at least as near as I can see, when other folks give up theirs, I'll give up mine. Gil Scott Heron. Gun. The gun appears at a gathering of little niggas in my driveway. The gun appears with a pearl handle in silk in a lockbox inside my mother's headboard. The gun appears on the belt of a middle school liaison. The gun appears in leather atop my father's woven wood placemat. The gun appears tucked on the waist of my big brother. The gun appears with those other niggas at the mini mart. The gun appears as a shotty pointed before my windshield. The gun appears in the bandeau on the bend of its cushion. The gun appears in chrome, stuck through the window of a Dodge, firing outside of paradise. The gun appears as signage. The gun appears soaking the lot with a steady light. The gun appears behind the bulletproof glass at BP. The gun appears in hand at the table of a drunk. The gun appears as a misfire. The gun appears at my boy's crib as a stick. The gun appears before the weather. The gun appears unbuckled on the officers who abound me. The gun appears in the basement. A father and his 3 sons fill 30 clips that hold 15 rounds each. The gun appears in double. The gun appears on a strap while my other brother eats a sandwich. The gun appears on the counter behind where I sit. The gun appears in the mind of my Uber driver having heard me make a clink. The gun appears loaded. The gun appears as a Warhol, a print tacked on the head of a shut room. The gun appears off another hip. The gun appears in front of the tiny air in my face. The gun appears as a joke. The gun appears as my fist in a hot mouth in no time. Black Martyrdom number 6. Litany of the Spectacle. Come, guillotine. Come, gallows. Come, gas-soaked pyre. Come, charred jaw. Come, hot pike. Come, hoary beast. Come, ardent hunger. Come, garret wire. Come, death wizard. Come, adze. Come, axe. Come, taut rope. Come, head knot. Neck kink. Come, click-clack. Come, firing hammer. Come, plank. Come, bullet. Come, wet smoke. Come, slump body. Bloody brook. Come, bloated excision. Come, slung wrist. Come, wind rot. Come, dead relic. Come, unholy witness. Onlooker lenses. Come, click, 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 clack, clank. Come, bullet. Come, bullet. Come, bullet. Come, bullet. Bullet, 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 bullet. Pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, pull.
That was in you. They're all in you. They're all there.
And those two, I never read those two at the same time. They're echoing so much, and
there's a reverberation between them that is really compelling. And there's an argument that's happening. The establishment of the argument, or where the argument lands, comes before where the argument starts, you know? And so, which is beautiful sequencing inside of a poetry book. I guess the question I have, because this book is, I feel comfortable saying this, making a declarative statement. This book is a realization, right? It's like, and I'm wondering when it became apparent to you that the whole creation of a blindly accepted, blindly or not so blindly followed narrative are all a part of a systemic game, right? It's all a part of the matrix. And so was it an epiphany, or was it a slowly emerging realization?
I think it was definitely a slow drip. Definitely was a slow drip. It's like, to kind of create an analogy off the rip, it's like as if, you know, throughout my whole entire life and up into working on this book, it's like I've been intravenously, like, you know, have like this like awareness molecule, right, constantly dropping down, right, where the world has, you know, has revealed itself more and more, you know, as I kind of go on. And then the text stereotype became this impetus, because I started working on stereotype before, like, the Flint water crisis happened. And then so when it did occur, it was like, wow, like more and more I'm seeing and understanding and feeling in my body and with my body this kind of matrix these matrices of you know, meaning making, racialization and performance that was kind of happening, right? And thinking about how we're all kind of oscillated, or we're all oscillating around these kind of objects of, you know, racialized performance, you know, the object of blackness, right? As being a very heavily discursive mode, right? of categorizing people, right? Or categorizing ourselves even. And so I think one of the projects the stereotype really kind of began to kind of, you know, like, is to show those kind of not like those kind of synaptic connections, and then also those kind of like those tacit, unspoken social contracts, right? That also, you know, kind of pervade and dictate, right, how we perform and how we, you know, behave ourselves, right? In this kind of context. And so I think what ultimately kind of, you know, what ultimately kind of happened is realizing that Black people in this context, right, this kind of very forced and inherent and inherited ambivalence, right, that we're always trying to, you know, like, work through or perform from, right? And also we don't always necessarily realize how ambivalent it is, you know, the things that we do, how at once, you know, of a survival mechanism, and how at once the violence are kind of, you know, in like new violence, right, are kind of, you know, really closely intertwined. So it's like, you know, it's like trying to, like, first point at the braid, right? Point at the circle braid, then to kind of, like, you know, take that rat tail and and undo it, right? Yeah, unravel it, right, and then re-braid it again, right, with great more attention to the tiny threads that bind us, right, to these ideas and these performances of who we are, who we should be, because of how we've been racialized, who we are, who we should be because of the current present contexts and circumstances we find ourselves in, right, and then also how to use the braid as a whip sometimes, and to how to also in doing that kind of work, that awareness work, and that kind of unbraiding and rebraiding, right, we actually have created we can forge a weapon, right, with this awareness, and I think that was the other, right, the other side of it, that stereotype had to show, because stereotype, I was thinking about even like the language, why I separate stereotype apart, stereos, all these Greek stuff, right, all this ancient Greek stuff, stereos, typos, thinking about the etymology of the words, it kind of like loosely translates into a solid strike. All right. And so thinking about how the stereotype, in kind of stereotypical, depictions, portrayals, right, is a literal branding, right? It's a little strike against our, who we are as individual people, right? But then, so like, how can I turn that strike around? How can I, so how can all this awareness then go kind of like to dismantle, right, some of these things that have already been kind of preformed for us, right? Like you kind of said, earlier, these little compartments that we're then just ushered into, and right. How can we, how can awareness allow us to, right, really kind of strike the walls down, and strike out against, right, that same kind of weapon.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea of branding is brilliant. Like, how do you resist the brand? How do you flip the script?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you do, just in terms of in the book, the ways that you flip the script is that you have a commitment in your work to decolonizing language.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of code switching and lingual plasticity. They're hallmarks that are hallmarks of the book. And here I speak of decolonization kind of as a way to correct intentional erasures or flat out burials.
Right.
One of the things the text does is it offers an invitation to hear a tongue and accept that tongue as legitimate. Mm-hmm. And so you move with such fluidity between the rhetoric of tapinosis and then a classed speech, often known as like an elevated speech. Right. So there's an ease in your fluidity that is enviable, right? Mm. Because you don't try to make excuses. There's no footnotes. This is what it is, right? This is how it's spoken. Try to understand it. Keep up. And so I was wondering, based on that, if you might read Black Ontology number 5, along with Black Existentialism number 13.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So we can just hear that high-low register.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Let me make sure I get.
And I don't call it high-low. I'm just saying in the.
No, yeah, that's exactly what you mean. But that's what I was thinking of. I was actually thinking about, right, that the high-low registers. Right. And then again, thinking about like these kind of like matrices of meaning, right? We are so equipped and we're so trained to typify sounds, images, physical dispositions, right? We are experts at doing that, at hearing a thing and giving it a category, giving it a place, assigning meaning and assigning value to it. And so it was like, if I can blend these high-low registers, right, it can disorient, or really it's trying to disorient that process of, of valuation or evaluation, right? That happens, right? So yeah, and then you have to feel it. You have to feel it. All right, so I want to make sure I can do this kind of seamlessly. This is Black Ontology number 5, and we will be going into Black Ontology number 6 right after this. Black Ontology number 5. Black as if always the blues of a stridulated half note, night gristle, locust chirp, bold neck, wax lips, wet stain, a body thronged hard and buried in the open light. The root of it dug up with a mouth stretched, reaching to scratch the noose from its throat and give everyone a song.
hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't got no way to make it out. Try to find me some help. No, I can't be found. So ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't even got a penny to make a pound. About took all I had. Who am I now? Well, ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang out. If I could, I'd run right straight out of town. Don't even need shoes, just feet on the ground. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't no news to think about. So I'm telling you later, I'm telling you now. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Now imagine if they never would have cut me down. Say imagine if they never would have cut me down. I would have made it out, still be found. Feet on the ground, out of town. Took a penny and made a pound. Out of water and on the ground. Said tell her now that I'll still be found. Said I'll still be found. Said I'll still be found. Said I'll still be found.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I hope the sound came through. Okay.
I'm wondering if I can jump in and ask a question. So it's like, it's so clear to me in your work that there's a spirit of musical improvisation, kind of like jazz improvisation, which is birthed out of blues, you know?
Right.
And I wonder how what we've witnessed tonight is a writer who lives his words, right? It's not just the one-dimensional page. It's about words living in your body and coming out of your mouth and meaning them. And there's so many different ways to do that. So I was hoping that you might tell us a little bit about Hang Around Blues, how that came to be, that collaboration came to be, and when you thought about the collaboration, like what made you think I need to go to blues? This can be a musical collaboration.
Yeah, that piece, it's almost inexplicable how it happened. You know, I'm back in the book. You know, I'm trying to find the inflection points where you know, certain themes, certain images, certain affects can be kind of, you know, explored or presented a little bit more dynamically, a little bit more comprehensively, and it really actually got spurred on when I met Danny Boy Stewart in a club randomly. So, you know, yeah, my guy who sings the hook on you know, I Ain't Mad at You, you know, with Tupac, and I didn't know who he was. I was like, boy, you can sing, boy, you good. You know, listen, man, like, you know. And I'm like, man, you want to make a song? You know, work on something. And you know, he, you know, was so gracious and so sweet and everything like that. You know, so I'm working. I'm like, you know, I got to come up with a song, you know, to try it on Danny Boy. And what ended up happening was I was like, you know, what's going on? Like, where is the space? Where is that space? And so Black Ontology had the reference to, you know, a song, right? But the song actually wasn't there. It was more so imagined, a song you had to imagine. And so that's why I found kind of an inflection point. I'm like, the song, right? The body that we are witnessing go through this traumatic, we're listening and watching a body, a Black person be lynched in Black Ontology number 5, right? And then we're also watching that body be asked to perform immediately afterwards, right? As both as a condition of two things, right? As a condition of, of recording the incident or, kind of resisting it, right? Then also at the same time of that very difficult tradition of Black folks having to sing their pain out, right? And that's how we entertain the world. And so kind of working in that mode, trying to find like what's the lyrics, what's the right song. So I'm listening to Gil Scott, Get Out the Ghetto Blues. I'm listening to, all kind of stuff, obviously Strange Fruit, I'm listening to a lot of different things. And then this energy, this spirit just came over me. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. And imagine if never would have cut me down. Said, imagine if they would have cut me down. Said so I'm kind of just, improvising. I'm recording. I use a voice recorder on my phone to kind of, just keep track of what's coming out and what's like the melodies that were coming through from being in this energy, from being in this space, from thinking and having to try to put myself in this position, right? My body, when I'm practicing and I'm singing and I'm rocking, with my neck cocked like this, thinking, what position, what do I know? What does the body know? Again, right, in that position, and thinking about how pervasive, and it also was inspired largely by going to the Peace and Memorial Justice exhibit in Montgomery, which I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Peace and Justice Memorial. It's a tough site. It's a very tough site, and you just have these boxes hanging above you with the territories of where lynchings have occurred and names that were documented, and it's the box that has this long paragraph that says this box is to represent the hundreds of thousands of Black people whose lynching went undocumented. And so the work was like, where are those voices? Where are those identities? Where are those faces? And then one thing that just the only knowledge that came through was there ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. And I sent it to Denny Boy, kind of try it out. That piece ended up not really working in the collaboration. So I wrote another song that Denny Boy does sing on the Try To Blues. And then before I know it, this whole blues aria started opening up in the front section of the book. That wasn't there before. Yeah. And these voices started coming through, and these how can I say this? I could say, I don't know if it's like personas or in a way, but there were stories. There were stories that were coming through some of these lyrics that I'm like, I'm hearing somebody, I'm seeing somebody who wasn't there before. And so I just knew, like, I do performance sometimes myself, but I'm like, I need the voice, though, is what's important, right? The voice is a sign of presence, right? Text is a container of absence in a way. So I'm like, I need the voice. I need a voice that can actually touch this same spirit, touch the same energy of these spirits, rather. And I reached out to Angie Fisher, and Angie Fisher just, has an amazing, voice. I heard her on her song IRS. She also has done a lot of work with other folks. And so I asked her if she would grace the song, and she sent that back. That was the first take, the first iteration. We had a couple conversations about it, really good conversations. She saw what the song was purposed for, what it was purposed to do. And she turned that around and sent it right back. And I'm like, oh gosh, these are the voices, right? That are, that want to be present, right? That are requiring, right? Presence. They're requiring their presence, and so that's how this became such a whoa. And then I ended up right before I left St. Louis, like 2 weeks before I left St. Louis, I met Dominique Jordan, multi-instrumentalist, he's the one who accompanied Angie Fisher on the flute there, and I'm like, this is the tone. That tone is like, we found the bell, we rang it. These very different moments, they're very different separate parts. Or really like finding bells to ring.
Yeah, and I mean, bells are significant. It's like your work is an ancestral offering. And because of that, it's never truly, you have the conversation about when do you know a work is done. It's never truly done. It's always evolving, right? Because your work is spirit work. Yeah. It's not just that you're putting words out on a document. It's that you are embodying those words. And here I think about Lorca and Duende, right? It's like the Duende then is a power, not a word. It is a symbol, not a thought. And so that's what your work embodies. It's like this working in Duende, working in spirit work, and being open to that. But I do imagine, I know we're running low on time, but I want to ask this one question. How do you stay energized, working with such compassion toward these deep and trying to bring voices to the absence, right? Voices that are hanging around but still have a story to tell.
Exactly.
Right? Like how do you stay energized around it? How do you do the work?
Yeah, that's
letting the trauma build up.
Right. Yeah, because it definitely builds. It's hard. You can hear even when I'm talking about it now, or talk about the process. It's like sometimes it's so inexplicable, and things kind of like seem to fall into place in ways that I'm like, this is out of my hands. Like literally something else. There's a different force that is pushing this through, or that's bringing this forth. It is an essence, right? And it's one that I think as I've gotten closer to embracing, as far as like, ancestral and familial, and also it's like the grief of it. Like we lost so many people, and we have never really kind of been able to contend with that or to grieve it.
Come on.
Like centuries, millennia of violence, millennia of death and persecution. We have never been able to grieve that. We feel it. We know it. We know it every time we watch it happening again and again and again. We know it, that there's still more grieving to do. Right. And so it's in a way, it's like, actually embracing the grief and saying, yes, this is something to grieve. These people deserve grief. Right.
And
our people deserve grief. Yeah. And not just grief, right? They deserve to be honored. They deserve to be, I am here because you were here, because you were there. I'm here. Right. And it's not in this kind of, this surrogate way. Like, how are we bringing their presences forth? Right. And not just as surrogates. Right. And so it does start there, and actually embracing that grief that has been denied. Right. I think collectively to Black folks, embracing that, and also, just really striving to connect with the presences and the actual essences of the people who, who have seen the worst that this world has to offer. And literally trying to make space, right? It's the same thing when we make space on the altar and we say, I'm going to make space here for this presence, for this spirit to enter or to reside or to, or to find, what is the word I want to think about, right? Or to find maybe even an offering here, like to, as the word you say, right? To kind of, and to show that, we haven't forgotten, and we won't forget. We can't forget, actually. Right? Something in our body, something in our DNA that will not let us forget.
Right.
Yeah. And it does take a lot of just not doing stuff. I'm not gonna lie. After I was, doing, hang around blues and track team blues, I couldn't do anything. I'm like, I just need to just not do anything, not think about anything. Because it can be, the grief can be so overwhelming, so crippling, even in its accepting it. It does require that attention to realize, we are in bodies that have needs. Our bodies need to rest. Our bodies need water. Our bodies need food. And so that's when the attention will shift to, I need to sustain this vessel. So more presences, more voices can then, have room, right? Because, we gotta make room And so that's what it does look like. It's like, right, making room within yourself and making room also for yourself and realizing you are a presence right along with, those that you're honoring. It's like a self-honoring kind of thing too. It's like, I honor you and I honor us.
Yeah. Every time you invoke a name, you also call out your own name. There's something about you that was able to recognize something in someone else. And in that way, no one ever dies nameless.
Right. Yes. I couldn't say that. No way I could say that.
It's just a beautiful thing. And I just wanted to thank you tonight for your reading, for your work, for your presence, for your continued work. And we didn't get a chance to talk about what the ancestors have lined up for you next. I want to open it up for other people to ask questions. And should we not get the questions, I'm going to ask that one. I wanted to open it up for other folks who are in the room. If you would like to ask a question of Jonah, I'm happy to moderate that question for you.
Yeah, thanks, y'all, for being here. Y'all been sticking through. I did see a question about the book being received by 11 to 14-year-olds. I would cherry pick from the book for 11 to 14-year-olds, possibly. The book is explicit, and it would take, not to say that, they shouldn't, because I'm sure they, at 11, 12, 14, they dealing with this shit too. So it's like, but it requires a little bit more context to, people understand, like, okay, why does the N-word appear in this book 126 times?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's also the part of the book that is kind of the echo memoir, which I think is an interesting part to share with children so that they can understand the impact of history, so the impact of the 2014 Flint water crisis. Right. And so it helps them to understand a connection between ecosystems, environment, race, and personal stakes, what happened personally. Someone.
Exactly.
So
right.
That would be an amazing part of the book to share.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
People are asking for Jonah to write a curriculum guide for educators. I think that would be a fantastic.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that really would be well. I think I also see it coming from Sarita here. Thank you so much, Sarita. That's something I think, I definitely will have to do, on this re-release. Some folks have it's a little vulgar, it's a little explicit and stuff like that. So I'm like, I don't want that to, it's not to be a detraction, right? It's always supposed to be, just truth, right? It's just the truth, this stuff, violence is vulgar. It is one of the largest vulgarities that we have ever seen, and what I think also is even more vulgar is intra-racial violence. That shit is, that shit is TV.
Right.
That shit is, there's no way to attend to that. Right, without being very explicitly direct and saying, this is it's another system of torture, right? Form of torture. It's one of the worst ones, right? No, I'm gonna wash my hands of killing you. Why don't you just kill each other?
Kill each other. Right. Right. It makes the system's job much easier.
It makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Cannibalization.
Yes, exactly.
It's what's for dinner in an empire.
And that's the art of it. That I think that's the artfulness of slavery. The artfulness of this kind of systemic racism that we are trying to contend with. It is an art. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Right. How do you create a craft, right, that will sow hate amongst seemingly like individuals,
right?
That's affect, right?
Right. It's self-hate made manifest.
Exactly.
And that's part of the game of empire, to make the oppressed hate themselves because they are not in the majority or in the group of the ruling power, and so
that's exactly the craft.
So here we are. We're toward the end. Any more questions? Happy to ask. If not, we're going to send Jonah off by asking him a question about what the ancestors have next. What are you working on?
Whew, yeah, I gotta get back to work too because I've been taking a break from the.
You need to. That's good.
Yeah, because when the other kind of like that journey, the hauntology journey happened with the ontologies of slavery piece that it's like nagging and gnawing at me. It was just so much. I'm like, oh God, like I'm being sent to Africa. I'm being sent to Montgomery. Now I'm here in Atlanta, and so I'm picking up threads that have been literally buried right throughout history, and essentially I did not know that I had this internal identity crisis going on with all of the all the Anglo stuff in my name, Jonah-Mixon Webster, like my entire name, if once being, that's, my first name being Hebrew origins, my middle name and my two last names being of English origin. And I did not know that was causing a crisis in me, that I had to uncover how my nominal identity was created through the legacy of slavery. So finding these, the wills of Micah Mixon, who owned my family back in 1805, finding the slave narrative of Eliza Evans, formerly Eliza Mixon, and holding this stuff. And it's one thing that came up and that just like really hit me. So when I found the slave narrative of Eliza Mixon, or Eliza Evans, formerly Eliza Mixon, and she tells the story of the Yankee soldiers asking what her name is. And she says, Liza, just Liza. I ain't got no other name. And the Yankee soldier says, well, who that live in that big house over there? And she says, Master John Mixon. That's Master John Mixon house. Well, your name is Eliza Mixon. And then she says, and he's like, will everybody ever call you nigger? And I said, yeah, okay, so call me nigger. Well, next time somebody call you nigger, you tell them that you was a Negro and your name is Eliza Mixon. And in that moment in the slave narrative, and then when she attempts to wield her name, right, her full name, even her own name, the name that she got from the master, was trying to wield her name onto her master, right? When the Master John comes says, nigger, what you doing? She's like, all right, no, nigga, I'm a Negro and my name is Miss Liza Mixon. And that moment, it was so powerful, so strong. I was like, oh goodness, right? And then she gets whipped by her grandmother afterwards. And that was and even just that moment of accessing this archive in this way, I'm like, wow, there is a lot more at stake individually for all of us when it comes to this, right? When it comes to the work, right? This kind of spiritual work, right? Because we are, causally, we are linked, right, to that legacy still. And if we can know, we can see, if we can trace it, right? Then maybe we can own more of our names, we can own more of who we are, own more of our identity, and it won't be a thing that, has to necessarily bring shame in that kind of sense, right? Knowing that our names or my name came from a slave master, the shame that will bear, that shame that does bear. And so picking that stuff back up, I'm trying to get ready for that because I know I'm about to have to go back to Africa, do some more, do some more of that work. Got to go back to Montgomery. I got to go to Mixonville, Alabama is the next stop. I have to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because John Mixon wrote me an email telling me that's where he was at, and he got some information on the Mixon brothers. And so, it's the journey of it and documenting that. Even now I can feel like I know I'm going to be held on the journey, but it's going to be a journey. It is going to be one, a journey through time, a journey through myself, and a journey through the selves of my ancestors. And so, that's going to be interesting. I have my aunt Rayner. I'm sorry, my aunt Helen Rayner, who passed almost 2 months ago. she left me this Mixon family book. So some of the other Black Mixons started collecting history and stuff like this. So it's just so much more stuff, to go through. And so I'm like, Ma Helen, she was a teacher, she was an educator, one of my first teachers. And so I know this work was going to go to keep her legacy alive as, just a beautiful person who touched so many lives and taught people how to read. I know it's going to do that, that each one teach one work. I live by that. That is a creed I do live by. Yeah. And so, that's where we're going next. We got some eaches to teach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to offer that I think the folks in this room want to hold you on that journey. So we appreciate the time that you spent with us. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel. This is always, I think that's why I was feeling I was saying I was nervous feeling, but I think what it was just my spirit was just jumpy. It was like,
Well, no worries. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you both.
A car.
I can't tell you how powerful and how touching this time with you has been. Thank you both so much for being here. Thanks also to the audience for great participation. And thank you to Amy Hagedorn and our partners at Knopf.
Oh, hey, Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I'm really happy about this book. And I hope that you guys come to Uncle Bobbie's and pick up a copy.
I need to come to Uncle Bobbie's and see, I got to make my way to Philly so I can see my sister.
Don't forget about us. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Have a good
night. Bye-bye. Please rest. Everybody rest.